Welcome back to Finance Empire Real Life Stories. Picture this for a second. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. The entire house is silent except for the sound of your fan spinning slowly in the corner of your room. You are lying in bed with your phone only 6 inches from your face, scrolling through your crush's Instagram profile like a secret undercover detective. You tell yourself you are only going to look at one picture, but suddenly you are deep in photos from the 2019, reading captions from another lifetime, and trying to figure out who that random guy standing next to them at a beach party was. Then disaster strikes. Your thumb slips. A giant red heart appears on a photo from 156 weeks ago. Your soul immediately leaves your body. You panic. You unlike the photo faster than lightning. But it is too late. The damage might already be done. Now you are sitting there in total darkness, wondering if they saw the notification, if they think you are a creepy stalker, and if you should fake your own disappearance and move to another country by sunrise. Be honest, we have all been there. Tonight's story is called The Accidental Like, and trust me, this one gets painfully awkward in the most relatable way possible. But along the way, you're also going to learn natural American English expressions, real conversational vocabulary, and phrasal verbs that native speakers use every single day when they panic, overthink, gossip, and try to save themselves from embarrassment. So grab your coffee, relax, and let's jump straight into this modern, digital nightmare together. The soft blue glow of Austin's phone illuminated the darkness of his bedroom, while the clock on the wall quietly ticked past 2:15 a.m. Austin should have been asleep hours ago. He had a massive budget presentation waiting for him at work the next morning, and his boss was already stressed enough without Austin showing up half asleep and running entirely on caffeine. But instead of resting, Austin was fully trapped inside the dangerous black hole known as late-night social media scrolling. And the reason was Sierra. Ever since the barbecue party the previous weekend, she had been living rent-free inside his brain. They only spoke for 15 minutes near the snack table, while arguing about whether cilantro tasted fresh or disgusting. But somehow that tiny conversation had stuck with him all week. Sierra was funny without trying too hard. She was confident, but relaxed. And unlike most people Austin met lately, she actually listened when someone spoke instead of staring at their phone every 30 seconds. Austin smiled slightly as he scrolled through another one of her pictures. First there were recent coffee shop selfies, then photos from a road trip in Colorado, then random blurry concert pictures with friends. He kept scrolling, further, and somehow his exhausted brain convinced him this behaviour was completely reasonable at 2 in the morning. Finally, Austin stopped on an old Halloween picture from nearly 3 years earlier. Sierra stood in the centre of the photo, laughing uncontrollably while wearing an oversized taco costume with fake lettuce hanging from the shoulders. Austin burst out laughing quietly into his pillow. "She's actually insane," he whispered to himself. He leaned closer to zoom into the background because he wanted to see if he recognised anyone else in the photo. His fingers moved toward the screen carefully, and then his thumb betrayed him. Double tap. The bright red heart exploded across the screen like a warning siren. Austin froze instantly. Every muscle in his body locked into place, while his heart slammed violently against his ribs. No. His thumb moved at superhuman speed as he smashed the screen again to unlike the photo immediately. The red heart disappeared. But the emotional damage remained. Austin threw his phone onto the bed like it had physically attacked him. He sat upright, breathing heavily while panic flooded through his chest in waves. He had just liked a picture from 156 weeks ago. At 2:15 in the morning, there was absolutely no innocent explanation for that. He buried his face into his pillow and groaned loudly. Fantastic. My life is over. His brain instantly started creating horrible imaginary scenarios. What if Sierra was awake right now? What if she saw the notification immediately? What if she screenshotted it and sent it to her friends? What if they were all laughing about him in a group chat at this exact moment? Austin rolled onto his back and stared helplessly at the ceiling. Sleep was officially impossible now. Every 30 seconds he grabbed his phone again just to make sure the like had actually disappeared. Technically the evidence was gone, but emotionally, Austin felt like he had committed an international crime. The next morning arrived far too quickly. Austin looked awful. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair was a mess, and he nearly poured orange juice into his coffee instead of cream because his brain was still stuck replaying the disaster from the night before. The moment he arrived at work, he marched straight toward the office break room, searching desperately for caffeine and emotional support. His co-worker Nolan immediately noticed something was wrong. "You look like you fought a bear last night," Nolan joked. Austin grabbed the largest coffee cup he could find and sighed dramatically. "I accidentally liked Sierra's Instagram photo from 3 years ago, at 2 in the morning. Nolan blinked once, then burst out laughing so hard coffee nearly came out of his nose. Austin stared at him in betrayal. "This is not funny." "Oh, it is absolutely funny," Nolan replied while wiping tears from his eyes. "This is literally everyone's worst nightmare." Austin slumped into the chair beside him and explained every painful detail. The scrolling, the taco costume, the accidental double tap, the immediate unlike. Nolan tried to calm him down logically. "Listen," he explained, "if you unliked it quickly enough, maybe the notification disappeared automatically." Austin stared blankly ahead. "Maybe," Nolan continued. "Modern phones do that sometimes." "But what if it didn't?" Austin whispered dramatically. Nolan shrugged. "Then congratulations. She knows you have a crush on her." Austin nearly choked on his coffee. The rest of the workday was torture. Every phone vibration felt like incoming doom. Every email notification made his heart jump into his throat. He kept checking Instagram every 10 minutes just to make sure Sierra had not blocked him. By lunchtime, Austin was emotionally exhausted, and unfortunately, things were about to get much worse. The very next afternoon, Austin stopped at his neighborhood coffee shop, hoping a large iced Americano might finally cure his stress. The smell of espresso filled the air, while soft music played quietly overhead. Austin had almost convinced himself the entire situation was not a big deal anymore. Then the front door opened, and Sierra walked in. Austin nearly dropped his drink. She looked effortlessly relaxed, wearing a green jacket and carrying a sketchbook beneath one arm. The sunlight coming through the window hit her hair perfectly like some kind of movie scene, designed specifically to ruin Austin's emotional stability. Then she spotted him and smiled and started walking directly toward him. Austin's nervous system completely shut down. "Hey, Austin," Sierra said cheerfully. "Fancy seeing you here." Austin attempted to respond like a normal human being. Instead, he made a strange sound somewhere between a cough and a dying bird. Sierra tilted her head slightly. "You okay?" "Yep," Austin answered far too quickly. "Absolutely fantastic." Smooth. Very smooth. They stood together near the pickup counter, making painfully awkward small talk, while Austin internally spiraled into madness. Every tiny movement felt suspicious. When Sierra checked her phone for 1 second, Austin assumed she was rereading the notification. When she smiled politely, he assumed she was secretly amused by his late-night stalking behavior. Austin became so nervous that he accidentally laughed at something that was not even a joke. The second the barista called his name, Austin grabbed his drink like a man escaping a burning building. "Well, okay, I should go because work and stuff and yeah." Sierra looked slightly confused but smiled anyway. "Okay, see you around." Austin nodded aggressively before almost speed-walking straight out the door. The moment he reached the sidewalk outside, he took the largest gulp of coffee in human history and groaned. "Why am I like this?" That evening, Austin decided he needed backup. Real backup. He called his older sister Paige and his lifelong best friend Grant for an emergency group call. For the next 40 minutes, Austin paced around his apartment explaining the entire situation, while Paige laughed non-stop. "You are making a mountain out of a molehill," Paige told him. "People accidentally like old photos all the time." Grant disagreed completely. "No," Grant interrupted dramatically. "His only option now is witness protection." Austin sighed. "Thank you both for being incredibly helpful." Grant continued anyway. "Delete Instagram, throw your phone into the ocean, start over in Alaska." Paige laughed again. "Or," she said calmly, "you could just act normal." Austin collapsed onto the couch dramatically. "I don't think I remember how to act normal anymore. The weekend finally arrived, and Austin hoped life would calm down. But fate clearly had other plans. Because 2 nights later, Nolan invited him to a casual trivia night at a local diner. Austin agreed immediately. A fun distraction sounded perfect. But the second he walked into the diner and spotted Sierra already sitting inside the booth, laughing with Nolan's girlfriend, Austin realized the universe absolutely hated him. And somehow, things were only just getting started. To be continued in part 2. Austin stared at Sierra's message glowing on his phone screen while walking slowly down the quiet sidewalk. The cool midnight air brushed against his face, but for the first time all week, his chest no longer felt tight with anxiety. Instead of panic, there was excitement. Instead of overthinking every tiny notification, he was smiling like an idiot under the streetlights. He slipped his phone back into his jacket pocket and laughed softly to himself. Just a few days earlier, he had been fully convinced that one accidental social media mistake had destroyed every chance he had with Sierra. Now, somehow, that exact embarrassing moment had become the reason they were actually talking. As Austin continued walking home, he replayed the entire week in his head like a ridiculous comedy movie. The late-night scrolling, the accidental double tap, the instant panic attack, the dramatic overthinking, the emergency phone calls, the awkward coffee shop interaction. And now this. Life really had a strange sense of humour. When he finally reached his apartment building, he climbed the stairs 2 at a time, with a grin still stretched across his face. The moment he stepped through his front door, his phone buzzed again. His heart jumped automatically before he caught himself laughing. "Relax," he muttered. "Not every notification is a disaster." He unlocked the screen. Another message from Sierra appeared. "Also, for the record, the taco costume photo is still one of my favourites." Austin covered his face with one hand and laughed out loud in the middle of his empty apartment. She knew exactly which picture he accidentally liked. There was absolutely no hiding anymore. He typed back carefully. "Honestly, the taco costume deserved the like." 3 dots instantly appeared on the screen. Then another reply came through. "Good answer." Austin fell backward onto his couch, staring at the ceiling with the biggest smile he had worn in months. For the first time in a long time, dating didn't feel stressful or fake. It felt natural, easy, funny. The next morning, Austin woke up before his alarm even rang. Normally, he dragged himself out of bed feeling exhausted and annoyed at the world. But today was completely different. He actually felt excited. He stood in front of his closet longer than usual, trying to decide what to wear to work, even though Sierra wouldn't even be there. He changed shirts twice before finally settling on a dark blue sweater. "You are acting ridiculous," he told his reflection in the mirror. But secretly, he didn't mind. At the office later that morning, Nolan immediately noticed Austin's unusually good mood. "Whoa," Nolan said while carrying his coffee mug. "Look who suddenly remembered how to smile." Austin tried to act casual. "It's nothing." Nolan narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Oh no, that means it's definitely something." Austin finally admitted that things with Sierra had gone surprisingly well after trivia night. The moment he finished the story, Nolan nearly spilled coffee laughing. "So, let me get this straight," Nolan said between laughs. "You spent an entire week emotionally collapsing over a notification, and she was stalking your profile too." Austin groaned dramatically. "When you say it out loud, it sounds even more pathetic." Nolan shook his head. "No, honestly, that's actually kind of perfect." For the rest of the workday, Austin found himself checking his phone every hour, hoping for another text from Sierra. Every buzz gave him a tiny rush of excitement. Around lunchtime, his phone finally lit up again. "Random question," Sierra texted. "Do you actually hate cilantro that much? Or were you just trying to impress me at the barbecue?" Austin laughed immediately. "Oh, I absolutely hate it. Tastes like dish soap." A few seconds later, "Good, because I hate it too." The conversation flowed naturally after that. No awkward pauses, no overthinking, no panic. They joked about terrible foods, embarrassing childhood memories, awful first dates and weird internet trends. Hours passed before Austin even realised how long they had been texting. By the end of the afternoon, Sierra finally sent another message. "So, coffee this Saturday? And maybe no emotional trauma this time?" Austin smiled so hard his cheeks hurt. Deal. Saturday arrived painfully slowly. Austin spent most of Friday night trying not to over-prepare for the coffee date. He cleaned his apartment, even though Sierra wasn't coming over. He trimmed his beard twice. He even searched online for casual but attractive first date outfits, before realizing how ridiculous he sounded. The next morning, he arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. Bad idea. Now he had extra time to sit there nervously, overthinking everything again. He tapped his fingers against the table while staring out the front window. Every time someone walked past the cafe, his stomach flipped. Then finally Sierra appeared. She walked toward the entrance, wearing a cream-coloured sweater and carrying her sketchbook under one arm. The second she spotted Austin through the glass window, she smiled warmly, and instantly, all his nervousness faded away. "Hey," she said as she sat down across from him. "Hey." This time the conversation felt completely effortless. There was no awkward tension hanging over them anymore. No secret social media disaster lurking in the background. They talked for nearly 3 hours straight. Austin learned that Sierra wanted to someday start her own design studio. Sierra learned that Austin secretly played guitar when nobody was around. They debated favourite movies, shared terrible high school stories, and laughed so loudly at one point that the barista glanced over at them. At some point during the conversation, Sierra leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You know," she said, "I'm actually glad you accidentally liked that photo." Austin blinked in surprise. "Seriously?" "Yeah," she admitted. "Otherwise we probably would have kept awkwardly liking each other from a distance forever." Austin laughed because deep down he knew she was right. Sometimes people spend so much time hiding behind screens and trying to look cool that they never allow real connections to happen. Ironically, the embarrassing mistake forced both of them to stop pretending. As the afternoon sunlight faded outside the cafe windows, Austin realized something important. The reason the accidental like felt so terrifying wasn't really about social media. It was about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of looking foolish in front of someone you genuinely care about. But now, sitting across from Sierra while she laughed at one of his dumb jokes, he realized something else too. Being vulnerable was uncomfortable, but sometimes it was exactly what opened the door to something real. Eventually, they stepped outside into the cool, evening air together. Cars rolled slowly down the street while soft music drifted from nearby restaurants. Sierra looked over at Austin and smiled. "So?" she asked casually. "What's the weirdest thing you discovered while stalking my old posts?" Austin laughed loudly. "Oh no, we are definitely not opening that conversation." "Coward," she teased. Austin shook his head dramatically. "Absolutely not. Some secrets need to stay buried forever." Sierra grinned mischievously. "Too late. I already know about your 2018 haircut." Austin stopped walking immediately. "You saw that?" "Oh, I saw everything." Austin covered his face in embarrassment while Sierra nearly doubled over laughing. And somehow, instead of feeling humiliated, Austin found himself laughing too. Because now it wasn't awkward anymore. It was their joke. As they reached the corner of the street, Sierra gently bumped his shoulder with hers. "I had a really good time today," she said softly. "Me too." There was a small pause between them. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Then Sierra smiled again. "Try not to accidentally like any more ancient photos tonight, okay?" Austin placed a hand dramatically over his heart. "No promises." She laughed one final time before heading toward her taxi. Austin stood there watching the car disappear down the glowing city street. Then he looked down at his phone in his hand. A tiny device, a tiny mistake. And somehow it completely changed the direction of his week, maybe even his life. As Austin walked home through the cool night air, he realized something important about modern life. We spend so much time worrying about looking perfect online that we forget real people are imperfect too. Everyone overthinks. Everyone gets nervous. Everyone has awkward moments they wish they could undo. But sometimes those awkward moments become the beginning of the best stories. And somewhere out there, another person was probably lying awake at 2 a.m, staring at their phone screen in complete panic after accidentally liking an old photo. If only they knew that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the disaster they thought it was.